One of my favorite lines from Pope Francis is something that he said very early on as Pope and has repeated at various points throughout his pontificate. It's just a simple little phrase. It's, God never gets tired of forgiving. It is we who get tired of asking for forgiveness. It's something I try to remember in my own spiritual life if I ever get bothered by needing to confess the same things again and again. It's also something I try to remember as a priest whenever the confession line seems to go on too long, such as Wednesday right before Easter, when it took us a little over 2 hours. But today is the second Sunday of Easter, a day in which in recent times also goes by the title Divine Mercy Sunday. Divine Mercy is the name of a particular devotion based on apparitions of Jesus to St. Faustina Kowalska in the 1930s. In these apparitions, our Lord spoke to St. Faustina of his desire to forgive sins and his desire that all should know and experience his mercy. Certain prayers are connected with this devotion, including the Chaplet of Divine Mercy. And if you want to learn more about that, you can pick up a copy of the pamphlet on our reception desk on your way out. Well, even outside of these apparitions to St. Faustina and the Divine Mercy devotion generally, we have a gospel reading on this Sunday every year that shows the merciful heart of Jesus at work. We heard today the story of doubting Thomas, in which Thomas the apostle does not believe that the other apostles have really seen the resurrected Jesus, because Thomas himself was not present when our Lord appeared to them. Thomas says that he needs to touch the nail marks in Jesus' hands and the wound in his side in order to believe that it's really Jesus. Thomas is slow to believe, despite all the times that Jesus has spoken about the importance of faith, and despite the ways in which Jesus had predicted his own resurrection, speaking, for example, about the temple of his body being destroyed and raised again in 3 days. Having heard all these things, we could certainly say that Thomas is someone to whom much has been given, and therefore someone from whom much should be expected. Nonetheless, Jesus does not scold him or spend much time on the deficiencies of Thomas's faith. Instead, he simply asks a question. Have you come to believe because you have seen me? This question would no doubt serve to help Thomas reflect later on why he was slow to believe and how he might believe more fully in the future. The story of doubting Thomas, coming as it does on Divine Mercy Sunday, can prompt a question from us as well. Why is Jesus so quick to forgive him? And why is God so ready to forgive generally? Why is it that God never gets tired of forgiving us? Ultimately, God's mercy is part of his love for us and his desire to draw us to himself. When we sin, we go against God's plan and separate ourselves from him to some extent. Grave sin separates us more fully than smaller sins. And if we die in a state of unrepentant mortal sin, well, hell is a reality. But God, who created us because he wanted to share his goodness with us, God does not want us to be separated from him. He wants us to be fully united to him, thus continuing to share in his goodness. In forgiving us, he removes a major obstacle to that closeness. Yes, we do retain our tendencies to sin, and thus are likely to be back asking for forgiveness often. But God continues in his desire to invite us back. God never gets tired of forgiving. On this Divine Mercy Sunday, pray that we imitate God a bit here and can be ready to forgive our neighbor. And especially pray that we never get tired of asking for forgiveness.